Hey guys. Okay, so in this week's video, what we're going to talk about is the proposed changes to the Brisbane City Council planning scheme. More specifically, I need my coffee this morning. More specifically is what I'm trying to say, Amendment Package L, which is currently out for public consultation. Now, there is three key reasons why I kind of want to talk about this topic or cover this topic off this week. First and foremost, I want to bring some awareness to the fact that there is some changes and kind of give people some insight into what those changes are so that they can go to the effort of actually looking at them in more detail and deciding whether they do have any concerns about them. Because if you have some concerns, obviously get a submission in about it. Like if you come to me in a year time and you bitch and moan about the fact that the site covers dropped to 50% across the board, I'm going to be like, did you lodge a submission? If not, don't want to hear it, guys. So yeah, it's an opportunity for you guys. If you want to make a submission, you've got to get it in by Monday. Number two, if there is a situation where you've got a job in the works at the moment that's it doesn't trigger now, but it's going to trigger down the track, or it's not contentious now, it will be contentious down the track if these rules actually come into effect as they're planned to come into effect, you might want to get your skates on and get those applications moving. And then last but not least, and most importantly, it's so that people can manage their clients' expectations to save us all some pain down the track. So you can start to say to people, yeah, I know double width carports forwards of houses, yep, they were a done thing back in the day, but those rules are about to change. It's going to get a bucket load harder so that, yeah, it kind of, like I said, manages expectations and we don't have the stress and the anger and the frustration, all of that sort of stuff, which inevitably will come. So that is the purpose of this week's video. Now, you will see as I go, I am going to refer to my little cheat sheet of notes here because those of you that saw social media last week, I've only just sat down. I only spent like 2 or 3 hours last night going through all of this stuff. So it is fresh on my mind and I have so many thoughts on all of this. Like I could go down so many different tangents. So if I don't have a little cheat sheet or a run sheet to stick to, I'm going to be here for hours waffling at you guys. So yeah, I thought, okay, break from my routine. Instead of just talking off the cuff, I am going to work off a run sheet just to make sure I keep on track and don't waffle too much. So 3 things I wanted to cover off first. As I just said, cheat sheet, I'm going to stick to it. Next is I'm going to address the elephant in the room here. I'm a bit late to the party on this one. So the changes were actually released, I think it was like the 23rd of October or something like that. Yeah, that was the day basically that I went overseas to Cambodia for a 2 and a bit weeks holiday. So yeah, I missed it for a couple of weeks. Came back and I was like, those amendment packages, they never mean anything for me in my world, like my Housey world. It's always like some zoning change to some remote site in the middle of nowhere in Brisbane, or it's a change to the unit rules for high rises, like a space that we do not play in. So yeah, I'm going to admit, when I first came back and saw the amendment package, I'm like, meh, it's not going to be relevant to me. I'll look at that later. Pushed it down my list. On the weekend, I looked at it and I was like, oh, damn, this is big. This is very, very big for me in my world. I kind of need to prioritize it and actually give it some consideration. So yeah, I'm acknowledging it has been out for consultation for a few weeks now. I should have picked it up earlier. I should have raised it with you guys earlier. It is what it is. You now have until Monday if you want to lodge a submission. But as I said before, the main priority here is not to get people to lodge submissions. If you have genuine concerns, obviously do it. My main priority here is about managing expectations, getting people talking so that we don't get the frustration down the track. And last but not least thing I wanted to say up front was change is always awkward. Change is always painful. It's not comfortable. It's where I'm trying to go here. But the reality is change is normally a good thing. So the analogy that I love to give people, and if you watch our social media regularly, you will know that I rattle this off time and time again. Back in the day, we used to use drills in the side of people's heads to alleviate headaches. These days, we have Panadol. So yeah, sometimes it is a good thing that we're not stuck in the past, just doing what we've always done, and that we're experimenting and trying new things because it can lead to better outcomes. So just try and keep that in mind when I talk through some of the points I'm going to cover off in this video. Okay, so we've set the scene. Let's talk about what my plan is today. My plan loosely, hopefully I stick to the script here, is to talk about my themes or the observations I've made in response to the theme. So what I think council's trying to achieve, what's driving all of this sort of stuff. And then I'm going to cover off the positives or the wins, the things that I'm like, heck yes, that is awesome. Bow down, council. You have done an amazing job. Then I'm going to cover off the inevitable headliners. So the things that naturally are going to leave people just going WTF, like mind blowing, this is going to screw me over type thing. Let's be honest, there's never going to be wins for everyone. There's always going to be some stuff that people aren't expecting, people aren't happy about. So let's just address the elephant in the room, rip that band-aid off and put that stuff out there. And then last but not least, I'm going to give you a bit of insight into my take on this situation. My take, like I said, based on my hot second review. Now, what I won't be doing today, I am only going to be talking about Housey stuff, so my world. I'm not going to cover off the rooming accommodation stuff, the commercial character building stuff. Yes, that is kind of part of my world in what we do, but there is just so much to talk about in the Housey space alone. I haven't had a chance to dive into the rooming accommodation stuff, and that is big changes there. So I'd like to say it'd be a different video. Probably won't be a different video, might be a different post. We'll see what I can get to this week. But yeah, today's video is just focused on the pure Housey sort of stuff. And like I said before, what I'm talking about here today is my real initial crude commentary based on the review I did last night. Like, I've had a hot second to sit down and start to process this and get my head around it. In an ideal world, I'd mull over it for a few days. Like they always say, you should take 24 hours to process emotional feedback, to remove the emotion and to start to really get clear on it, things, all that sort of stuff. So ideal world, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to park this. I'll come back later, share my thoughts. So they can be well-rounded and polished and really comprehensive. Yeah, we don't have that time. Submissions close on Monday, so I'm making it happen today. So yeah, there'll be comments that I make that later I reflect on. I go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that, or I've now had time to think about it a bit more and I can see this is the positive, or this is a different way to approach it type thing. So please don't haul me over hot coals. Keep that in mind, that it is really fresh. Okay, so now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's talk about the 5 themes. So after I sat down and I reviewed all of these Housey changes, what did I think the 5 things were that council was trying to achieve or that were driving all of these changes? First and foremost, they are tightening the belt on granny flats in a big way. Now, I'll get to why that is later, but for now, let's just say they're tightening the rules and requirements there. Next, there is a very clear direction. What am I trying to say here? Push. Let's go with push. A very clear push to align with the QHC, so the Queensland Housing Code. If you don't know what the QHC is, it's basically the draft document that's going to replace the QDC, which is the Queensland Development Code. If you go back to the post that we did back in, I think it was the end of July this year on our social media, I talked about that and the public consultation process that was going on there. So yeah, you will see a lot of the stuff from that QHC document has been copied and pasted into this new document, and it's very clearly been done to align them, which I'll get to as a massive positive. Next is they are documenting the informal intentions. So often in applications, they're like, yeah, the words say this over here, but really this is the pain point over here. This is the issue we're trying to achieve. So for example, we're always talking when it comes to small lots, reduce side setbacks, reduce rear setbacks, site cover, all of that sort of stuff. Council keeps talking about, we've got to consider or account for the future neighbours and the future built form and how the property could be used in the future. That word future is currently not in the planning scheme. There is no reference to it. So we now see that wording come into these changes. So yeah, there is a very clear push to document some of the informal stuff that we've all been addressing and talking about in our applications for a long time. And then last but not least, number 4, I was getting ahead of myself. Number 4 is to address growing pain points for council. So complaint generators, things that are just chewing up so many of their resources. For example, the big black boxes on the rear of TBC houses. Yeah, so there's clearly, throughout all of these changes, council's gone, this is driving us nuts. This is taking up so much of our resources. This is clearly an issue for the community. We need to address it. Let's make it happen. And then last but not least is reducing the ambiguity and the wasted resources around grey areas. So council gets pulled into court cases. They spend so much time in the offices negotiating with applicants like us over grey areas and all of that sort of stuff. It's not a good outcome for anyone. It's not a good outcome for council because they're wasting resources, and they're like, in terms of their time, the town planners' time, they're wasting taxpayer money. It's not good for us as town planners on the private side because we're wasting our time. It gives people a lack of certainty when it comes to making purchase decisions. Like, it's not a good outcome. So yeah, there's been a very clear push to reduce that ambiguity, to give everyone more certainty going forward and to reduce the time drain and all of that sort of stuff. So that is my take on, again, based on my hot second review of the 5 themes or common, themes is the best way to say it, that I came up with, or that I noticed as I was reviewing all of these changes. Now, let's go with the positives. Let's focus on the good stuff. First and foremost, there is now a clear definition on carports, core, built to boundary walls, things like that. That they've actually taken those interpretations, definitions that we've been loosely operating on. Like I always used to say, oh, based on my conversations with the DA manager, this is what they're interpreting it as. And every certifier or every applicant's like, but it doesn't say that in the planning scheme. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't want to be the guinea pig that defends it in court now, do you? So just stick with what I'm telling you guys. So now I'm like, oh, thank goodness. I don't need to argue this with people anymore. It's documented now. So that's the first positive, first win. Next, the carport definition now actually aligns with the QDC definition. So instead of me sitting here, like people rattle off, oh, you need to be 1/3 enclosed or open or whatever the certification rule is right now. You need to be 1/3 open and then it's carport. And I'm like, yeah, that's the certifier's rule. That's the QDC rule. Our rule is different. I know it's not documented, but our town planning rule or council's interpretation is it needs to be enclosed on no more than 2 facades and the posts need to be 1/2 metre off the boundary to make sure it's not enclosed, blah, 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 blah. It's uber confusing for people. So yeah, now we're just going to align with the QDC definition. Hell yes, love that. Next, there has been a slight softening when it comes to the small lot rules. 2 areas in particular. So when it comes to rear setbacks, there used to be just 2 categories. If you're less than 25 metres, you had one type of rear setback rule. If you're more than 25 metres, it was different setback rule, which was 6 metres. Now there is a 3rd category. So now it's 25 to 35, no, sorry, it's 35 metres and above is 6 metres. It's 25 to 35 metres is generally 6 metres, but in some circumstances down lower to like 3 metres or something like that. And then if you're under 25 metres, you can potentially, I think, go down to 1.5 or something like that. Don't quote me on these things, but basically there's 3 categories and they've kind of reduced the setbacks in certain circumstances. So that's a win, right? And then when it comes to built to boundary wall height requirements, in certain circumstances, they've actually increased the height. So you can go from 3 to 3.5 metres. So yeah, itty bitty little softening when it comes to the small lot stuff. Next point is avoiding siting variation duplications. This was a real bugbear for me. Everyone's always like, oh, the certifiers told me that we need to go back to council for this application for the setbacks. You've already done an application to council. Surely that's been assessed. And the presumption or what they're trying to imply is basically I screwed up and I didn't know my job. And I'm like, no, guys, that's not the case. So what I have to explain is when it comes to large lots in particular, 99% of the time, maybe not 99% of the time, a lot of the time, the setbacks are not actually considered as part of the planning scheme. Like the rules at the moment do not prescribe minimum setbacks when it comes to side setbacks and things like that. So you cannot assess the setbacks as part of the planning scheme in Brisbane at the moment. So when you get to the certifier, if you want to build within 1.5 or 2 metres of the side boundary, you trigger a siting variation. So yes, you do have that duplicate of applications. Now, because they've brought all the QDC setback rules, in crude terms, into the dwelling house code and the small lot code, dwelling house small lot code, it now means they can be assessed as part of that application. So yeah, the win is in a scenario where you would have had that duplicate application, where you would have lodged the town planning application and then the siting variation, in theory, you can now, and I say in theory because again, hot second review, I'm going to keep saying this, in theory, we can now do it as part of that initial DA. So that's a win because it saves the resource drain, the money, the time, all of that sort of stuff. Love that. Okay, so, and then the final thing, see, this is why I need notes. I'm just going to keep missing stuff. The final thing is, I believe it cements granny flats as a option into the future. So, 2 years ago, state government just came in and dropped a Christmas bomb on council, Brisbane City Council. I think it was like 2 days before Christmas or something ridiculous. They went, yeah, by the way, we're changing all of these rules on you. Didn't tell you, didn't warn you. It was a fun time for council. So council at that point in time was just like, whoa, what the heck are we going to do here? And there was this scrambling. And for the last 2 years, it's been like those temporary changes are going to expire in September 2025. What does that mean? What's council going to do as a knee-jerk reaction? Like, are they in this boxing ring and they going to suddenly return serve? And are we all going to get knocked out here? Like there was that uncertainty in the industry and that led to a lot of stress and people couldn't make decisions and all of that sort of stuff. Whilst, I will get to this, whilst the granny flat rules are more restrictive, as I mentioned before, we are tightening that belt, at least it gives people certainty. They can kind of relax and go, okay, we can see where things are sitting now. We can see what council's intention is, assuming these changes get adopted. We can breathe easy and move forward with certainty. So I think that is a massive, massive positive. Okay, now we come to the headliners. So the things, like I said in the beginning, inevitably, they're going to stir people up. They're going to generate a lot of chatter, let's just say. But as I said, you've got to hit it on. You've got to address the elephant in the room. There's no point dancing around this stuff and being like, it's all sunshine and rainbows. Because there is some stuff in here that's going to have people going, oh my goodness. So I think there is probably 4 key categories of changes. Like I said, again, in the housey space. We've got first and foremost exemptions, secondly granny flats, thirdly small lots, and fourth, last but not least, TBC. Now, there is so many changes occurring in some of these areas, way too much for me to talk through in this video. So what I'm going to do, if all goes to plan, we'll see what happens when I'm editing this video later today. What I'm going to do is flash up on the screen a summary list of each of the changes, the highlights reel, let's just say, of things that I think people should be taking note of for each one of those. If it all goes to plan, I'll do one screenshot for each or one sort of slide for each category. You guys, what you can do then is either hit pause on the video, take a read before you continue to play, or you can take a screenshot and come back and look at it later. I say if it goes to plan because there's a lot of notes that I wrote down last night and I don't yet know if I'm going to be able to condense that onto one page. Excuse me. I may end up having to do multiple pages. We'll see what happens here. So just work with whatever I end up having to do. But what I thought I'd do is give you a teaser, let's just say, for each one of these categories. So first and foremost, exemptions. In TBC, TBC being traditional building character overlay, at the moment you can extend off the rear facade of the house. You can do that on corner lots, you can go up, you can go sideways, you can do whatever you like, basically. And that's how we get those, what's the word I'm looking for? Those notorious big black boxes, or the contemporary boxes on the back of TBC houses that have developed a really bad rep. So yeah, the rules have now been changed, or they're going to be changed, to say that you can't do a rear extension under the exemptions on a corner lot. And there will be a lot of people that go, I didn't think you could do it already. You couldn't do the demolition work. You could still do the extension to the rear under the exemptions. But yeah, going forward, if you've got more than one road frontage, you're not going to be able to do an extension to the rear. Next thing is just building on that. When it comes to the rear extensions, at the moment, you can go up, you can go sideways, as long as it's attached off the rear of the house. Under these new rules, you can't extend above the existing roof line or above the core walls of the house. So it's basically going to be sitting behind the existing house. That's exempt. But if you start to expand beyond that, it's going to trigger a DA. Like I said, when I flash that screen up, take a screenshot, hit pause, read the whole list of the highlights, because that is just one little teaser. Next, granny flats. Granny flats. Okay, so where do I start here? Let's just say they're going to get smaller. So and this is a really, really crude statement, but generally speaking, you're going to be limited to a maximum of 10% of the site area as your internal floor area going forwards. So if you have a 405 square meter block, that means 40.5 square meters of internal space. That is down from 80 square meters. And if it's a detached granny flat, and I should say it's secondary dwelling is the official term here, planning scheme term. Granny flat is what we all call it in layman's terms. If it's a detached granny flat, or if the house in front is 1 story, you can only do a 1-story granny flat at the rear. Heap of other rules. Again, hit pause on the video, screenshot, have a look at them all properly. Next is small lots. So the big one, the big headliner I think here is site cover. So at the moment we have a sliding scale of site cover. So if you're over 400 square meters, you can do 50% site cover, over 300, 60% site cover, over 200, 70%, etc., etc. You get the idea. It's going to be a blanket 50% going forward, and that's to align with QHC stuff. So yeah, that is going to affect a lot of properties, especially like Petrie Terrace, Spring Hill, Red Hill, Paddington. Yeah, that's a lot of properties. And then TBC, the big one I want to mention there, what do I talk about here? There's so many to talk about. Let's just say your lower level needs to be recessed. Side extensions, you can't actually do it out to the side of forward. Let me rephrase that. So at the moment, people do a lot of side extensions for garages and things like that. Now, any side extensions ideally need to be positioned beyond the highest and rearmost ridge. So they need to be pushed back to the rear half of the house. You can't do enclosed carports forward of houses. Like the carports need to be maximum 3.5 meters width with no doors, no walls. There's a lot of changes in the carport space. So yeah, that is the quick summary. You guys can go back and read it all in more detail. But again, I do want to stress, this is just the highlights reel, the top things that jumped out at me. You really do, if you want to get your head into this space, really do need to go and have a look through the full documents. Okay, let's look. Next, we're going to come up with let's just look at how much more I've got to talk. We're going to cover off 4 things that I've taken away and then some final comments. So the 4 things is, I think it is a incredibly positive step in the right direction in terms of they're clarifying the grey areas, aligning with a related sort of legislation, being the QDC, QHC. They're removing a lot of the question of who's responsible. Is it council, town planning section, is it council building section? Like, there is so much that's going to be resolved in terms of grey areas, messiness, awkwardness that I have to deal with every single day. So yes, it's a massive win to get those sort of things clarified. For me as a planner, double-edged sword. So on one hand, I'm like, bow down, you're resolving these conflicts, these issues, these questions. Love that. The other part of me is like, every time we do a rear granny flat in TBC, we're going to trigger a DA now. Every time we want to do a rear extension that doesn't stick to the rear, it's going to trigger a DA now. Every time we go 50% site cover on a small lot, it's going to trigger a DA now. Like, I can see so many additional DA triggers, and we are already really struggling to keep up with the workload. Like, to put in perspective, and I think this is hilarious, to put in perspective, on our website and our social media, I don't know, a month ago, 2 months ago, what it was, I put a post up that basically said, we're closed to new clients. When I say new clients, it's new jobs, essentially. Existing, let me rephrase that. New clients in terms of new building design professionals. So existing building design professionals that we've worked with for a long time, still taking on your work. And the whole reason why we closed our books was to free ourselves up for you guys. But yeah, put a post up and basically on the website said, unless you're prepared to don a unicorn onesie and do a dance for us or do something equally as weird and wonderful to demonstrate your allegiance to the BTP vibe. Like, I just put this stupid statement out there just to go, shits and giggles, if someone wants to give me a unicorn dancing onesie video, I'm gonna have to take you on, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to say no to that. We've had some creative come through the door. I had one guy offer trapeze flying lessons. He said he didn't have costumes, but he could teach me to trapeze. And then yesterday, I had a lady reach out and she's like, don't have a unicorn onesie, but I've got a from Vanuatu, some traditional female costume. And she legit sent the photo through of her dressed up in it. And I was like, you people are impressive. I was not expecting that much of an uptake from that little statement on our post and our website. So yeah, point I'm trying to make here is we are already trying to reduce our workload so that we can free ourselves up to improve our customer service for our existing clients. If we have this tidal wave of additional applications, what does that mean? And like, my first reaction was, it's all right. Once people adjust their expectations, they're going to stop designing houses over the 50% site cover. They're going to stop designing all these things that trigger a DA. But that thought process worked back in the day. So like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that was the thing. People didn't want to go down the DA path and they would actively modify their design to avoid a DA. These days, the cost of development, the pressure in terms of housing size and all of that sort of stuff, people go, $5 or $6 grand on a DA plus plan costs, blah, blah. We'll suck it up. It's cost of development. In the scheme of things, we're spending $2 million on this reno. Means nothing. Let's make it happen. So it's not as if I can sit here and say, oh, it'll be a short-term pain. It'll die off. We'll see the applications drop off. It's going to really take council probably being really stringent on these new requirements and setting the expectation that that is the new norm for people to start adjusting. If there's any sort of wavering going on, yeah, those applications are going to keep coming. So yeah, like I said, double-edged sword. Next is granny flat stuff. Okay, so I struggle with this one. There's most of these changes, I can go put myself in council's shoes. I understand why. I understand the pressure. Granny flats is one of those ones where I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something here, guys. So back 2 years ago, like I said, state government stepped in, dropped some crazy changes in the granny flat space. Council was caught off guard. Council was worried about the public backlash, so the amenity impacts that were going to be generated from this. So ever since then, 2 years ago, council started talking about increasing or creating these new design restrictions when it came to granny flats to try and minimise or manage the amenity impacts to the neighbours and all of that sort of stuff. So this has been in the works for a very long time. Now I sit here and go, guys, have we actually had the backlash we anticipated? Like these changes we're proposing, like down to the one story, the 10% site cover limit, all that sort of stuff, are they just a delayed response to a perceived or potential problem that just didn't eventuate? Or is there a genuine issue there? Are you guys getting absolutely hounded with complaints about this stuff and I'm just living in my own naive little bubble and not seeing those complaints? I don't know. I'm going to ask some more questions, obviously. But at the moment, I do look at that one and go, oh, did we really need to take a step back? We took this massive step forward because of the housing crisis in terms of allowing additional dwellings into the residential type areas. Now that we've taken that massive step back, like forward, do we really need to go 10 steps back, like back behind the old rules in terms of what we can get on these sites? Do we need to take that step? Is it necessary given the housing crisis, given the evolving needs of people these days, all that sort of stuff? Is that the best move? I don't know. Like I said, parking that one for the moment. I need a bit more information before I make a judgment call. But at the moment, that is the one thing I'm kind of struggling with. And then the final comment in terms of my takeaways was who's going to struggle most with these changes when it comes to the housey space changes? It's going to be the small lot developers that rely on the 70% site cover, 80% site cover / small lot house renovators that kind of rely on that. That's where I'm going to see there's big pushback there. And actually, I should say with the site cover thing, in council's defence, my belief, my interpretation is it's not council that's driving that one. What they're doing is just aligning with the QHC changes, because this exact statement came up when we did the review of the QHC in the middle of the year. So yeah, I think they've copied and pasted that. I don't think they've created that. So that one I think is probably going to be the most contentious thing out there. So yeah, don't throw your hate at council for that one. No, I won't go down that tangent. I was going to explain why they've gone the site cover route. I'll do a separate post hopefully on that, because this video is going to get way too long. So yeah, I think the small lot peeps are going to suffer in that regard. Trade-off is you get reduced rear setbacks, which might help with orientation designs, all of that sort of stuff. And then the final thing is the granny flat peeps. Reduced internal floor area, limits in terms of the number of bedrooms, limits of wall heights. There's all that extra stuff coming in. That's going to have an impact. And then we don't even get to the rooming accommodation changes and all of that sort of stuff. That's a different world altogether. So 6 final comments. Got a couple of points pointed down here. So the first thing I really, really want to stress here is perfection is impossible. In creating the planning schemes, you've got too many competing interests. There is no possible way that you can create a perfect outcome that appeases everyone. It's about a balancing act. I need that coffee this morning. What I'm trying to say is town planning is a balancing act. You're never going to get that perfect outcome. You have to compromise in certain areas. So please keep that in mind. And it's a work in progress. Like, there's so many things. When I read this document last night, I was just like, guys, this AO conflicts with this AO. Or do you realize that AO allows you to do this, but this one doesn't? Like, there's certain things that need to be worked through, but that is the purpose of the public consultation process. When you're developing a scheme, you've spent years, generally speaking, getting into the nitty gritty, focused on the fine details. Sometimes you need to take that step back to be able to see the obvious issues. So that's what the purpose of the consultation process is. Step back. What are we missing? Okay, yeah, didn't anticipate that one type thing. So yeah, try not to be too critical and realize what point we're at in the journey. It's not the final release. Next is ask yourself why. So I am always saying I am super duper grateful for the fact that I started my career working in Brisbane City Council. So I started on the grad program many moons ago, started there. And the biggest reason why I'm grateful for that is it gave me an appreciation or an understanding of the why. So I think on the outside world, you don't understand, or you're not privy to why certain decisions are made. And it's very easy to judge and to get critical and to think that people are just, I've got to watch my language here. I got in trouble once for saying certain things. So let's rewind there. Let's just say, it's important to understand why people are making certain decisions, what the pain points are, what the pressures are, what the competing interests are, all of that sort of stuff. So before you go and judge, take a step back, put yourself in their shoes and go, why could they be driving this? And how do I attack it that way? Next, like I said before, do not in 2 years' time or a year's time come whinging to me about a specific criteria if you do not do a submission. You have no right to go off your head about that sort of stuff if you're not going to get involved now. And then if you do choose to do a submission, I've got a few tips. I did mention this in the post that we put up earlier this year. Earlier this week. Keep it respectful. Like, if you get really agitated and aggressive and defensive, all it does is say to the person, the reader, that you're overcompensating. You're trying to make up for something, which means your argument isn't that great. Whereas if you can calmly and clearly communicate what your issue is, it's instantly going to lift it up. So yeah, keep it respectful, people. Next is, like I said before, put yourself in their shoes, understand what they're trying to achieve. Next is, don't just bring problems, bring solutions. So don't just turn up and go, I don't like this. Go, I don't like this. This is the reason why I don't like this. And here is my solution. I think my phone is about to die. Hopefully not. This is my solution so that they actually have an alternative to consider. Now, next is talk like you're talking to a school age student. So often, and I'm guilty of this, so often in our industry, we talk in jargon, we think people understand things that to us are common sense, but they just haven't had exposure to that sort of thing before. So don't make assumptions about the knowledge base, dumb it down, really simplify it, really explain it, and you'll get more cut through. Now, two final things is I did put a link on our link in bio in Instagram. So if you go to our bio, our little blurb up the top, there's a link tree. I think it's Linktree. Link in there, click on that. The top link on the page there actually gives you a Google Drive folder, which has a shorthand summary of all of the changes. So I took the 154 pages, broke it up into 11 documents that are relevant to each of the Housey things. I'm talking really fast because I'm worried this video is going to cut out. And then I basically culled the pages that I didn't think were critical to try and really condense it into some more bite-sized bits. So if you want the shorthand version, the starting point, go there and check that out. And then last but not least, I've got one request. If you did like this video, if you did find this video helpful, please, please, please like it, because what do they say? Only 10%, something like 10% of your audience actually ever sees your post, and that's a good post. So I really want to get this message out to our client base, to the people that we work with, so that, like I said at the very beginning, we can start to manage expectations. So if you give me a like on this video, it tells the algorithm that, hey, this is good content, and it will start sharing it to more people. So please show me some liking love. Okay, that's probably, I wouldn't say a record. I've probably done a longer video before, but it's definitely a long video. I like to keep my videos these days to under 5 minutes. This one a long one. So I think that covers off everything I want to talk about today. As I always like to say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got three. Number one, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site-specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number two, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number three, what was my number three? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all.